Welcome back to NewsX. I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. In this conversation, we will discuss incoming US President Donald Trump's plans of action. This includes his tariff policy and his promise to make America great again. How will he take on his tough stance on immigration, and whether threats like taking over the Panama Canal are more than just talk? Can Trump broker peace in the Russia-Ukraine war or a Hamas-Israel hostage deal? What will be his plans to take on China in the Indo-Pacific region? The US's growing military support for Taiwan. Let's find out. Joining us is Professor Rohan Gunaratna. He's a distinguished expert in security studies. He's currently serving as a professor at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Throughout his career, Professor Gunaratna has authored over 20 books, including Inside Al-Qaeda, Global Network of Terror. His research focuses on terrorism, political violence and international security. Thank you, Rohan, for joining us. My first question to you is, what do you make of Trump's tariff policy? Will it benefit the USA?
President-elect Trump has repeatedly said that he is going to impose a tariff of 25% on Canada, Mexico, and on China an additional 10%. Certainly, it will compromise free trade, the direction in which the whole world is moving. It could enhance the US economy, but it could also cripple the US economy. So there's considerable debate whether it's going to benefit the United States or not. But one must understand that today, most of the manufacturing is not done in the United States. I don't refer to the high-end manufacturing, but as a result of this, President Trump-elect and many others believe that by imposing these tariffs, or what you call a tariff threat, that the US economy will grow and United States will once again become a powerhouse for manufacturing.
Trump has vowed to act tough on immigrants. How will this impact the US economy?
The United States is a migrant nation. The most brilliant minds in the United States, they came from overseas. And if you look at the US history, the United States would not have progressed so much without migration. So, but at the same time, there are some migrants that are productive and other migrants that are not productive. Some migrants take the jobs of the Americans. So I believe that every country should be very selective when it comes to their migration policies, so that they will not take away the opportunities of their own nationals from working and doing well. I also believe that Trump referred to migration in a sense to get his votes. So when he becomes president on January 20th, he may not take such a tough stand.
From Trump's tariff threats to Canada and taking over the Panama Canal, do you think Trump will actually act on them?
Trump is the most powerful. Trump will be the most powerful world leader. The other world leaders that are very powerful are the President Xi Jinping of China, the Vladimir Putin of Russia, Modi of India, Netanyahu of Israel, and the MBS Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, because these leaders can do a lot to restore global peace and security. But at the same time, they have taken a very tough position on certain matters. For example, I would like to see Prime Minister Narendra Modi having a rapprochement with China, so that China and India will be friends again. Because until 1962 border war, China and India enjoyed a 3,000-year friendship. Similarly, if India and Pakistan resolve their differences and restore peace, India will become a global power. So will Pakistan. Pakistan will become a very developed country. So, but these are all very difficult challenges for Trump, for Putin, for President Xi Jinping. So I personally believe that 2025, the world leaders, such as the top leaders that I mentioned, they can either contribute to global stability and security that will bring peace and prosperity, or they can make decisions that will make the world a very unsafe place. So the decision making very much rests not in them, but in their advisors. So they have to select the best minds to advise them.
What do you make of Trump's foreign policy on the Russia-Ukraine war? Can he negotiate a peace deal, and how?
United States, Europe is at war with Russia, but Trump himself wants to stop the war in Ukraine because he can see what the Russians can do, not only to Ukraine, but to the rest of Europe and to the United States. So in fact, President Trump just announced that President Putin requested to have a meeting. So I believe that one of the first meetings Trump will have after his inauguration would be to invite Putin to meet with him. He may go to Russia, Putin may come to the US, or they might meet in Europe. But what is important is that there is a good chemistry between Putin and Trump, and I believe that itself could lead to a resolution. When it comes to dispute resolution, it is always the personal chemistry, the connection that matters. And both of them respect each other. So I believe that there is a big chance that the Ukraine war will end if there is agreement on the part of these two world leaders.
Trump has spoken about negotiating a hostage deal between Hamas and Israel. Is it realistically possible?
President-elect Trump has sent a very clear message to Hamas, and he's very serious. He said, before I am inaugurated as the President of the United States, that is on the 20th of January, you better release the hostages or you will be annihilated. So President Trump's statement should be taken very seriously by Hamas and by Hamas sponsor Iran and by the Muslim leaders of the world. They should issue statements condemning the Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023, and they should also tell Hamas not only to release the hostages, but to surrender, because there cannot be Hamas in Gaza, and we can't expect there to be peace. So I personally believe that this is very, very important for there to be a greater understanding of how Trump will deal with terrorism and with terrorist state sponsors.
Do you think the Trump administration will crack down on China through trade and strong military action in the Indo-Pacific region?
Trump administration will not use military force against China because President Trump has now invited Xi Jinping, the leader of China, the chairman of China, to come for his inauguration on the 20th of January 2025. So although Trump used a lot of rhetoric, he also has to be practical and pragmatic. Otherwise, he wouldn't invite the leader of China. So I think that it is very important for people to understand what is political rhetoric and what is the reality. China and the United States can't fight. If they fight, there'll be a World War III. So the Americans and the Chinese have to work together, whether they like it or not. And whether America likes it or not, China will rise as the next superpower. It's already an economic superpower. And it is very important for the United States that's 10 to 20 years ahead of China in terms of technology and military might to work with China, not in confrontation, not in conflict, but peacefully, so that there will be two superpowers in the world in the early 21st century. India, of course, will also be a superpower, but India needs good leadership. Indian leadership needs to instill discipline in the hearts and the minds of the Indians. If Indians are disciplined, India also can rise in the early 21st century as a global superpower.
The US has granted more military aid to Taiwan, which has elicited strong reactions from China. Is the US ready to fight a war against China in the East China Sea if it came to it?
Sooner or later, China will annex Taiwan. It's a question of time. And what is important is for China and the United States and the international community to work together on how to resolve the dispute between China and the rest of the world. China should rise peacefully. Currently, China has many border disputes with the neighboring countries, including Malaysia, Indonesia, and many Philippines. And one would like to see China rising as a peaceful power, not a power where countries are angry and annoyed and disappointed. So there must be a dialogue, discussion, so that China's rise will not create more enemies, but will create friends. The old doctrine of China before communism came was that it was very much driven by the dharmic philosophy, which India had for many centuries. That is righteousness in their rule. But after communism, things have changed. And what is important is that big powers should ensure that they don't trample or harm small powers, and that they work together and respect nation states as they are. I have always said this in my discussions with my Indian colleagues. That is how India should deal with its neighbors, and how the United States should deal with its neighbors, how Russia should deal with its neighbors. If that can be achieved, then of course, those smaller countries, neighboring countries, will respect those major powers and big powers.
Trump has come down heavily on BRICS. Do you think that BRICS has the potential to challenge the dollar in the new world order?
BRICS is on the rise, whether the United States like it or not. But certainly, President-elect Trump has made statements that has made BRICS take a step back. But I think the rise of BRICS is inevitable, because the world is moving from a unipolar to a multipolar world. And Trump himself will realize that as president. And the US government itself will realize that. So I think that what is important is for the United States to accept the reality of the new geopolitical equilibrium and work with other countries harmoniously, so that there will be economic prosperity where every country can prosper. If the world's leaders work together as friends, there will be no country that will be starving. There will be no country at war. So I think it is all to do with greater understanding between leaders, because it is leaders who decide what is going to happen next.
Thank you, Rohan Gunaratna, for speaking to us on Focal Length. With that, it's a wrap on this episode. For more international news updates, stay tuned on NewsX.